Crash after crash after crash after crash. It's fair to say Franco Colapinto's F1 career started with a pretty heavy repair bill for Williams and Alpine respectively, didn't it? Clearly very fast on debut last year for Williams, the young Argentine has been able to invigorate a dormant Argentinian fan base desperate for someone to throw their support behind. But he's not just a pay driver, is it? Because that accusation was understandably rife after Flavio chose to bring him into the Alpine stable, piling even more pressure on Jack Doohan, who only lasted 6 rounds. Then it was Franco's turn. But I tell you what, things might have started a bit wobbly and the car might be a bit of a bus. But I think Franco's doing a better job than you think. Now that he's settled in, he's stacking up pretty favourably compared to Pierre Gasly. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. Now look, on a surface level, you might be thinking to yourself, Tommo, what are you talking about? Pierre's on 20 points with a P6 in Silverstone to his name, 7 Q3s as well, a P5 in Bahrain quali, the highlight of the year. Franco, on the other hand, has precisely nil points. His closest shot to points being his P11 in Zandvoort, which is very much elevated by Lando and the 2 Ferraris not finishing. Not a single Q3 to his name all season, his best start, P12 in Canada, getting to Q2. Thing is though, that's the problem with looking things only at the surface level. When you scratch a little bit deeper, there's more nuance there. It's in the details that you find the little sparkles of that rough diamond that may well be Franco Colapinto. And because his stint at Alpine is now 12 weekends in, a nice divisible number by 2, I think we should split it. Look at the first 6, look at the last 6. Because it's only when you look at both separately and then bring it together that you get a true idea of how he's progressed during his time at Alpine. Imola, Monaco, Spain, Canada, Austria, Britain. Franco is thrown in at the absolute deep end around a track that bites in Imola. It certainly did bite him, didn't it? With no pre-season testing, remember. Absolute minimal mileage in the Alpine A525. Look, I think that context is exceptionally important if we're going to try and dive into the nuance and have a good faith discussion around where Franco's actually stacking up, right? Because yes, in the first 6, Franco was way off of Pierre, because of course he was going to be. I mean, we all remember Pierre Gasly 2021, right? The streets won't forget that year. An 18 out of 22 Q3 hit rate, regularly able to outqualify Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari. Pierre Gasly, over a lap, is rapid. If you're going to look at his best qualities as a driver, you're going to have to put his qualifying performance in his top 3, I think, for sure. Pierre's literally in his prime right now. He should be fully on cooking. The car is not good enough, but Pierre absolutely in himself should be right now. So yeah, in those first 6 weekends as Colapinto teammates, the average qualifying deficit 0.275 advantage Pierre, almost 3/10, and in a generation where Max is consistently putting half a second on his teammates, like 3/10 is still too big, by the way. That is still too big. It's still not good enough. But again, with all of the context, for Franco to be within 3/10 of Pierre, actually pretty respectable. And that's before we look at the most recent 6 weekends where things look very, very different. Belgium, Hungary, Netherlands, Italy, Azerbaijan, Singapore, the final 6. When you look at these Grand Prix in isolation to the first 6, it does paint a different picture. For rookies in particular, right, it's difficult to make an impression when you are in a team that's in the mid to lower field, and Alpine are making the worst car on the grid right now. Just ask Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Nick De Vries. It's difficult, but not impossible if you've got that bit of star quality. I mean, right now we're seeing Gabriel Bortoleto assert some absolute authority over Nico Hülkenberg, which, by the way, if we're going to say qualifying is one of Pierre's top 3 talents, qualities, you've got to say the same for Nico Hülkenberg, surely, right? Absolute demon over a lap, yet Gabriel is standing up and standing on him a bit. In their last 6 weekends of teammates, their average qualifying gap, 0.273 advantage Gabby. Basically the same gap Pierre was putting on Franco in their first 6 weekends as teammates. And then at Sauber over the course of the entire season, it's averaging 0.059 advantage Gabby, demonstrating how for the young Brazilian things are trending in a positive direction. What about Ollie Behrman and his far more experienced teammate Esteban Ocon at Haas? Their quali gap in the last 6, 0.142 advantage Ollie, 0.038 over the course of the entire season, again advantage Ollie, again demonstrating a clear trajectory upwards. And then of course back to Franco and Pierre, the topic, the subject of this video, their last 6 weekends as teammates. Average gap, 0.001 of a second. A thousandth. It's a dead heat. And over the entire season, 0.127 advantage Pierre. Again, positive trajectory upwards, lovely, jubbly. To be honest on this one, look, I think race performances are what they are. That Alpine's got its struggles with the power unit, with the ERS, right? And he had a blinding start in Singapore, by the way, did Franco. Very, very, very good. But I think we've come to the conclusion here, and you might disagree with me, and I do still think Jack deserved more of a chance, more than 6 Grand Prix. However, in the 12, given how Colapinto has just been chucked in, right? Whereas Jack had pre-season testing, he had a bunch of TPC over many years previous because they wanted to make sure the same thing that happened to Oscar Piastri didn't happen with Jack doing. He didn't do enough in the 6 weekends he was given. And Franco, yes, he's been given 12, but in terms of total mileage in that car, he's still not touching what Doohan was getting. Yet now he's matching Pierre, which again, Doohan could occasionally get one over on Pierre. It's impossible to say, of course, right? But Flav's been kind of proven right a little, bringing Colapinto in instead of Doohan. Perhaps that's harsh on Jack, but you're looking at his relative performance to Pierre Gasly right now, and you can't be unhappy with where Colapinto has gotten to. Yes, it's taken a bit of crashy damage, a bit of higher budget than they'd have liked to get him to that point, but it feels like he's there. This kid ticks so many boxes. Now, of course, commercially, huge Argentinian fan base, massive, been waiting for someone to jump onto and throw their support behind. Yes, a toxic subset of the fan base does exist, and it's a shame. However, I've had enough run-ins with enough driver stands to know that actually every driver has a toxic subset of their fan base that should be called out, but at the end of the day, it doesn't represent the majority, and that's the important thing to remember. Franco's star appeal was massive in Argentina. It's going to bring sponsors, it's going to bring eyeballs, it's going to bring interest into a team that Alpine is selling off shares left, right and centre, so who knows, maybe we'll get a bit of an Argentine buy-in to that team, which will only further solidify his future there. That's of course me just speculating for the sake of it. But look, it's not even just because of the passport he holds. Like, he's a proper little character. Like, I think he's got so much charisma as Franco. He could really carry the kind of socials and really lead that team and be a real presence. And I love that in F1. You've got so many different types of character. You compare Franco Colapinto to Oscar Piastri and it's like chalk and cheese, but that's great. I love that. And the fact he is 22 years of age, he's got a couple of years on some of the other rookies, you know, Bortoletto, Kimi Antonelli's obviously still 19, and it's like that little bit of extra maturity seems to carry himself very well. And again, as much as it's been quite crashy, it's been pretty quiet these last few weekends, which is a good thing, by the way. He's just been going about his business, slowly improving, steadily moving up the field, and Alpine being off at the back, it's tough in some ways because it's hard to get a measure relative to other drivers in other teams. However, it does kind of take the spotlight and pressure off. Because if even Pierre Gasly can't pull out a result in this car, what chance has Colapinto got? Paul Aaron's been linked with this seat as well. Jack Doohan, that kind of interest from Alpine's senior personnel has kind of fallen off completely, which again is a shame for Jack. And Paul's good. I think Aaron's a great driver. I think Franco's absolutely doing enough right now, though, to show that actually he's meriting being there right now. I don't think Jack merited getting dropped, but I do think Colapinto merits the rest of this year and probably next year at least as well. And talking to next year, I mean, that's got to be exciting, right? I do wonder how the team at Enstone are feeling getting the Mercedes power unit in the back, which is expected to be the right choice for 26 onwards. They know how to build a chassis in Enstone. That's one thing that they've not really struggled with all that often. They've always been able to deliver a mid to high level chassis, and it's the engine that's held them back for far too long. With businessman Flav at the top, with a solid old head like Pierre Gasly, I call him an old head, he's 3 years younger than me, but moving on, and the speed and the commercial backing behind Franco Colapinto, I don't want to say things are looking up at Alpine because they're lost, but there's room for optimism here. I'm trying to cling on to some desperately. 6 weekends to go this season. I hope that Colapinto can continue to have a decent upward trajectory relative to Pierre. That's all he's got to focus on, really, how he stacks up relative to his teammate, laying the groundwork, getting to know the team, getting embedded in the same way that kind of Lewis is with Ferrari, right? And Carlos is with Williams. It's not really about the results this year. It's about getting settled in this environment, and then 26, let them cook. But let me know what you think. Am I just gassing him up too much, or have I got some method behind my madness? Let me know in the comments below. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.